welcome back for another instalment of Lindzi Illuminates It. It was really strange that I should put a trigger warning before I talk about the topic that I'm going to discuss this month, and the topic is death. It is really, really common for people to find the topic of death triggering. I totally get it. I used to really suffer with a lot of health anxiety. I still do to a certain degree, and certainly a lot of anxiety around dying. And I think it was through my own experience and high anxieties around it that led me down this route of being quite interested in the topic and quite intrigued by it. So death is the one thing that we can all be guaranteed in life, that and that nothing stays the same forever. So I just find it really fascinating that the one thing that's going to happen to all of us, and the one thing that we are absolutely guaranteed, is also the one thing that people find it really uncomfortable to talk about, that we quite often have to kind of make this warning about it being a triggering and sensitive topic. And yet it's something that literally is going to happen to each and every one of us. It's unavoidable. Now, I don't think it's always been that way, and I think in many cultures it's not that way at all. Death is something that's seen as just part of the natural cycle. I suppose that's why I thought it was really important to include it as one of the topics. So I used to be really scared of the idea of dying, and then slowly but surely that all changed as I started to delve a little bit more into the spiritual aspects and alternative realms, and I suppose even having experience with psychedelics and things like that. All of a sudden, along with a strong sense of faith that there was something more to this life, my fear around death began to disappear. And along with that came a passion of helping other people to get over their fear as well. I think that fear of death has been capitalised upon. There's a lot of money to be made around fearing death, and also by making it this kind of very morbid topic. There's a lot of kind of, if somebody dies in your family, then you've got to provide them with the best funeral, and they've got to have the best gravestone, and if you don't get this extravagant gravestone, then it's going to look like you didn't care. And I think yet again, capitalism is kind of at fault. Death is just part of a cycle that's absolutely natural, and to be honest, the more I look into it, I feel like that cycle is ongoing, whether it's reincarnation on this planet. I mean, I'm not here to kind of talk necessarily about my beliefs, but I am here to encourage you to do your own research and discover your own beliefs. Have a little look into near-death experiences. So when science advanced to the point where we could bring people back after they'd scientifically already died, this is when we started to get a glimpse into people's near-death experiences. So people that were technically dead and yet they were still conscious. So there's all sorts of stories of people kind of floating above and watching everything that was going on, or being in contact with passed on ancestors or other beings, being told that you've got to come back because you've still got a job that's not been completed yet. All sorts of crazy, wild things that just sound absolutely extravagant, and yet so many people have had these experiences. And like I say, there was a massive growth of those after science advanced to the point that we could bring people back after they'd technically already passed on. So that is something definitely I would recommend looking into. As I already mentioned, I think there's money to be made in keeping people scared about dying. So what I would love to do is reduce that fear and give people a control back over their life, where they're not spending their whole life worrying about when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. The fact is, it is going to happen. In some respects, you can kind of take peace from that fact. It's the one thing that we all share, that it is that we are going to die at some point, and we're all terminal. There's a well-known saying, you only live once. But I like to say, no, actually, you only die once. You live every day. Really, we should be taking every day as an absolute miracle and giving it our best shot. One of the tricks that I like to play on myself as a reflection tool is to think, if I was given the news that I was on my deathbed or that I was going to die tomorrow, what would I be really glad about, and what would I be really regretful of? And I feel like that's a really good way to prioritize things in your life and realize what things you want to actually achieve. Because, you know, if I was being told that I was going to die tonight, I actually, although I'd be gutted because there's still so much that I want to do, I've genuinely lived my life in a way that I'm proud that I've lived it. I've achieved, I feel like I've achieved as much as I possibly could have achieved in the time that I've been given. So I think it's a really good reflection tool to be able to put yourself in that position and think along the lines of, what should I do to be able to provide the peace around the fact that one day I'm not going to be here anymore. Another way of thinking about that is, what legacy do you want to leave behind? You know, quite often people talk about the fact that we live on whilst we live on in other people's hearts or in other people's minds. As long as people still speak our name, then we live on. But, you know, seriously, what legacy do you want to leave? Think about the funerals you've been to in the past, and they talk about their achievements and their qualities and what kind of person they were, and how do you want to be remembered? I think another way that you can kind of put things into perspective a little bit is to think about your great-grandparents or your great-great-grandparents. That's only, what, 1, 2, 3 or 4 generations above. So in 3 or 4 generations time, you're just going to be this name or this distant memory. People might have met you, they might have seen photos of you. Think about how detached you actually are from that generation. And, you know, if they really cared about what house they lived in and what car they drove and what clothes they wore, you don't know anything about that. Those things don't even exist anymore. So, you know, it can help you have a little bit of perspective about what is actually important and just let go of those things. If, like me, you suffer with anxiety around your health, or how I did when I was younger around the idea of dying, I think a really good place to turn is to look at all the different faiths out there, and kind of ancient beliefs and ancient religions and things like that. Like ancient Hinduism is a really interesting one, and even the Egyptian, the hieroglyphs, how they depict the journey of death and how you're judged and then your heart is weighed against a feather. I think that when I started going down that rabbit hole, that definitely started to provide a lot of comfort for me. I also believe that with that faith that there's something more out there, it can bring a lot of peace and forgiveness into your life as well. So quite often when somebody treats me badly, I just think, well, you know, their judgment time will come. It's not up to me to judge them while we're in this lifetime. We're all having our own experience and our own shot at life, and, you know, they're the ones that are going to have to face those actions at some point. And it's not actually down to me to dish out that karma. You know, the greater forces will do that job for me. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say you should go out and take certain drugs, but another thing that has helped with my understanding and faith and things like that has been researching other people's experiences when it comes to taking mushrooms and DMT, maybe even acid. They basically kind of give people these experiences of being in a different realm, of completely forgetting that their physical form even exists, and they're, you know, off tripping elsewhere, and then when they come back around, it's like, whoa, I'm still in this life. And I think that those experiences can actually be really helpful when it comes to getting over your fear of death and realizing that this realm that we're locked into perhaps isn't the only thing that's out there. There's all sorts of theories that have helped me come to terms with death and understand death a little bit more. Things like simulation theory. Is this whole reality just a simulation anyway? Also, even looking into the 5 senses that little bit deeper, and that realization that our 5 senses, they create this reality around us. That's all this reality is. It's not the only reality, it's just the one that we're tuned into right now. The biggest point that I want to make is to absolutely embrace living. You know, discover what your passion is and connect with people, and just try and have as many experiences as absolutely as possible. And let's reduce this fear that we've been taught to have. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next month. Happy living.